Stephen King's iconic works have spawned many terrifying villains, but few are as emotionally brutal as the antagonist in his 2018 novel The Outsider. Known for terrifying entities like the shape-shifting Pennywise from It, King outdoes himself with a far more insidious villain, one that thrives on emotional pain and devastation rather than sheer visual terror. While it caused lasting fears of clowns and has become deeply embedded in pop culture, King's The Outsider presents an entity whose malevolence surpasses any literal shape-shifting creature. In The Outsider, the eponymous villain feeds not just on physical death, but on grief, loss, and emotional wreckage. The Outsider, a villain who feeds on grief. The Outsider begins with a grotesque crime, the brutal murder and rape of an 11-year-old boy. When the police arrest the clear suspect, Terry Maitland, and the case seems clear with solid DNA evidence, the horror of the situation only deepens when conflicting evidence surfaces, exonerating Maitland posthumously. The real villain isn't simply human. It's a malevolent, shape-shifting creature that exploits grief, desperation, and suffering, transforming the town into a psychological war zone. Unlike Pennywise, whose terror is primal, the Outsider thrives in the aftermath of trauma. He doesn't just kill. He destroys lives by warping emotions, pulling families into a spiral of rage, vengeance, and endless mourning. While Pennywise's terror might send shivers down one's spine, the Outsider creates emotional chaos on a scale that lasts much longer. Choosing victims with devastating precision. The Outsider carefully selects his victims, knowing how to exacerbate existing grief. His decisions are calculated and chillingly cruel, choosing individuals whose emotional pain becomes the linchpin of his power. The Petersons are among his first victims, their lives ruined by a wrongfully accused man who is murdered before his innocence is realized. Their pain gives life to the Outsider's power. Then, he moves to Claude Bolton, a reformed man whose tragic past makes him vulnerable. Like Terry Maitland, Claude represents someone whose suffering is ensured. Unlike Pennywise, who is often described as delighting in the pure fear of children, the Outsider wants to warp lives irrevocably. By preying on the emotional devastation of families, he infects the entire town with chaos that unfolds for years. Ralph Anderson and Holly Gibney, investigating the impossible. Detective Ralph Anderson's guilt over his participation in Terry Maitland's wrongful death drives him to continue investigating, even when the trail grows cold. Meanwhile, PI Holly Gibney, experienced in dealing with odd cases, helps unravel the mystery. As they dive deeper into the identity of the Outsider, it becomes apparent that the creature isn't just using its ability to shapeshift, but is actively manipulating people's emotions to create a much larger tragedy. Holly's own experiences in dealing with supernatural creatures and mysteries only deepen her fear, as she realizes how insidious the Outsider's methods are. Despite her vast knowledge and willingness to confront evil, she finds herself equally powerless in understanding the Outsider's motives. The Outsider's influence on the mind and body. The Outsider's power extends beyond merely inciting fear. It infiltrates the very core of its victims. One of the more sinister plot twists in The Outsider is when the creature targets Jack Hoskins, a corrupt detective. The Outsider's ability to manipulate Hoskins through physical suffering proves the depth of his reach. Not just a shapeshifter, the Outsider also uses his powers to warp and control individuals into furthering his campaign of emotional destruction. What makes the Outsider so terrifying? Unlike other King villains like Randall Flagg or Pennywise, the Outsider is more methodical and quietly devastating. His terror isn't based on eerie clown imagery or apocalyptic battles. It lies in the real, everyday suffering of ordinary people whose lives are forever broken by tragic events. The Outsider is human, and yet transcends human understanding. He thrives on suffering and despair, bringing people to their lowest emotional points. Where Pennywise represents primal fears, children trapped by a monster in a colorful mask, the Outsider operates by slowly peeling back the layers of a community until it is filled with nothing but pain. This malevolent creature is a reminder of the quieter, insidious horrors of life, grief, helplessness, and the realization that sometimes there is no one to fight or defeat. With The Outsider, King introduced a new breed of terror, one that goes far beyond the realm of monsters, tapping directly into the darkest recesses of the human psyche. In the end, The Outsider is more than just a frightening shapeshifter. It is a manifestation of cruelty, a being that doesn't just want to destroy, but to poison human lives with the emotional toxins of grief and loss. King's ability to craft such a villain has ensured The Outsider is one of the most terrifying and heartbreaking characters in contemporary horror fiction.